Hello viewers and welcome to a brand new episode of Mechanic Brewery Season 5, where I talk about the various homebrew mechs created by the Lancer community. In today's episode, Rose, from Ironleaf Foundry, by Akirio. But first let's actually talk about the company. The Ironleaf Foundry is the premier manufacturer of melee-shot technology, on the world of Milicia. When the first committee ended and Pistol 1 was launched at the Onic people, so billions not yet born would be sentenced to death. Some at the Union space program were sickened by this decision and the passivity of the larger part of the Union. Though unable to change what will happen, they refused to be a part of what would one day become the second committee, and chose a harder life in distant stars rather than pretending they couldn't see the blood on their own hands. Lost from Union for 2,000 years, the Militian developed a very different technological path from Union, as due to the local megafauna being very hostile to large groups of armored vehicles, the various growing Twatha were forced to develop more towards raiding and dueling over large armies. Based on the original exoskeletons of the Union space program, the Ironleaf Foundry focused primarily on the mastery of miniaturization, meaning their catalog is full of chassis barely larger than a hard suit, and yet that didn't diminish their capability one bit. That doesn't mean they don't tinker with some rather large frame, or completely radical idea. This historical need for dueling didn't just affect the development of their frames, but also blossomed into a love of both arena combat and extreme sports, resulting in a world where mercenaries and companies often go to win or lose their fortunes in highly publicized events and gambling. Anyway, let's take a look at their core bonuses. First, perfection of form. You and all adjacent allies gain an additional +1 to all checks and saves. Once per mission, you also automatically succeed at any one check or save. Do you hate getting grenade, stepping on Lego bricks, or just basically any effect that doesn't involve shooting at you? Then get this so you can ignore them more often than usual. Second, Frigarage's warding. For once per scene, when you are attacked, the attacker first suffers 10 AP kinetic damage and is knocked prone. This does not count as a reaction and resolves before the triggering action. Do you not like getting shot out of nowhere and wish that person will just die on the spot? Well, get this instead, and bear in mind, it said when you are attacked. Melee, ranged, tech, doesn't matter, that which is going to hell. And also there's actually quite a few NPC with 10 or less health, so this can be even more funny. Third, orbital drop training. At the start of the scene after all characters have been set up but before any turn has started, you can just move your speed, which ignores engagement and does not provoke reaction. Or once per mission, you can hold yourself in reserve instead, basically being out of map, whether in orbit, buried alive, whatever. At the start of your first turn, you can put yourself anywhere on the map, as long as you are 8 spaces from a hostile. This consume your standard move for the turn. Never before has surprise stabbing an artillery or support unit has been any easier. You will always be the closest to the enemy first no matter what for the most part. Fourth, perfection of skill. You gain +1 accuracy on non-weapon melee and ranged attacks. You also have resistance to damage from drones, grunts, and subordinates. Subordinate is a Lancer homebrew unit type from Grasping at Ashes and Smoke Mini supplement by Sasha Alamova. They are basically grunts, except they are actually grunts, so you can throw huge amount of them without DPSing the players to death in the first round. But basically, ram, grapple, improvised attack, you gonna love it alongside brawler, and resistance to grunt is nice too, just to let the weaklings know who's in charge here. Fifth, perfection of spirit. You can freely move through and share spaces occupied by larger allies. While occupying the same spaces as an allied character, they gain soft cover, and when they move, you can also move with them, mirroring their movement. This doesn't take a reaction, and also don't provoke reaction or obey engagement. Like to stick with the big guy, this will benefit you a lot. And hilariously, this means that a tiny size half unit can defend its larger allies via soft cover effectively, which can be very useful for the frame I will be talking about soon. And sixth, Iron Crown. You get a whole new structure damage table. This is gonna be too fucking long, so I will just summarize this even more. With Iron Crown structure damage table, you are gonna be just plain tougher and more effective at taking revenge against whatever that strike you down. Lost a weapon, you can still shoot it one time with massive bonus. Lost a system, it means you are lighter now and can move faster just for a moment. Took a really big hit, you are not stunned, you just lose only a quick action, and if your mech is about to fail, you will bring someone down with you. Combining this with Brewery's frame would be very funny, that's for sure. To summarize, the Ironleaf Foundry core bonuses really emphasized the dueling culture on Milicia. A lot of the core bonuses are about being skillful, or deflecting and withstanding damage to counter-attack right back. perfect for those that want to push themselves or just want to last a bit longer for the perfect moment. Anyway, let's talk about rose. Rose is a flower. You probably figure that out already. It's a flower often tied to Valentine's Day for its meaning of love, passion, admiration, whatever. I don't follow this flower meaning shit, but even outside of just Valentine stuff, roses are popular everywhere, as they are often bred for their beauty, to the point that if you ask an 8-year-old me what flower do I know, I would say hibiscus and rose, and sunflower too, I guess. However, there's probably another reason why parents want their children to know what roses are, because they have thorns, really stabby thorns, and everyone knows that children like to touch goddamn everything. It's how we learn things as children, sometimes painfully, a lot of times painfully. Named after the flower, the rose is an elegant yet dangerous dualist frame built around a spear that can seemingly cut through anything, and I do mean anything. Looking at its stat, the rose is a very small frame that has 2 armor, low health, and okay amount of repair cap. It's rather speedy with an average evasion though. It also has a decent save target with a short sensor range, but its E-defense is just awful and it can't hack anything well. Its base system point is also very low, but it does have good amount of heat cap. As for its traits, it has 3 of them. First, immortal skill. Rose counts as size 2 for the purpose of ram, grapple, and engagement. Second, scalpel. When Rose causes system trauma, you can choose which system or weapon to be destroyed. And third, dueling overrides. Rose cannot be hidden. With these traits, Rose excels against both large opponent and multiple structures enemies like veteran, elite, and ultra. You can really move around them due to not being engaged, and take them apart as you like. Heck, a size 1 moving to you means they get stopped instead, and I still find the idea of a tiny frame grappling a giant multi-meters tall mech with ease very funny. However, you also cannot hide, which is not a problem if you don't even bother to use that action, but it also means you just plain cannot use infiltrator talent at all, so keep that in mind when building the rose. Moving on to its weapon mounts, it has 2, 1 flex and 1 main, but in reality, it actually has 3, as looking over to its core system, the rose has the Thorn, a weapon system the frame is built around, much like how an A10 Warthog is built around a 30mm Gatling gun. It has excellent damage for a main with OK threat, plus AP, and reliable for a very high number. These stats together make the Thorn a very lethal weapon, but there's more. This weapon can overwatch when hostile characters enter, leave, or exit spaces within its threat, no matter whether they started their movement there or not, meaning if they move within 2 spaces of you at all, you can slash at them with a painful swipe. And there's still more, because it has an exclusive reaction called Solstice Night, which for once per round, when you or an adjacent character is targeted by an attack, you can contest it with a melee attack. If you win the contested roll, the attack auto misses, and the attacker suffer 3 AP energy damage. This reaction can be taken while grappling, and this attack gains +1 accuracy if the triggering attack was melee. This is why the rose is categorized as defender and why I said it works very well with perfection of spirit. It's essentially a Ronin on the player side, and we all know how bullshit Ronin is. It can cut down literally any kind of attack for itself and its allies, and I do mean any attack.
How did you?
By the way, this is just the core passive for Rose. For its core power, Rose can activate its Thorn Energy Spear for shifting seasons, which with a protocol, let you choose one of the following stances for the rest of the scenes or until you pick a new one. Flowering Revival Stance. When you use Solstice Night reaction, the triggering character, you or the adjacent ally you are protecting, can immediately spend 1 repair to regain half of their max HP. Blistering Raise Stance, a good way to describe fucking summer these days. When you use Solstice Night and win the contested roll, the attacker suffers an extra 4 burn. Falling Leaves Stance, Solstice Night is once per goddamn turn instead of round. And Whirling Snowflake Stance, when you use Solstice Night and win the contested roll, the attacker only has line of sight to adjacent characters until the end of their next turn. All of these are absurdly powerful option, but you can only pick one of them at a time, so take a pick and cut your foes apart. As for the rest of the license, you get Polyfilament Kusarigama and Swordbreaker in the first section. Polyfilament Kusarigama, Razor Edge from a distance, is a main melee that can arc over obstacle that does a decent 4 kinetic damage, and on a critical hit, the target is knocked prone, and on your turn, the weapon has 5 threat, a very long reach for a melee weapon, however, only on your turn, so it's probably not that useful in overwatching people. Swordbreaker, made for catching blade, is another main melee with very short threat that deals a rather low damage, but on hit, the target is slowed and impaired until the end of their next turn, so it can be a very useful tool to make the target do worse for a while. Aside from Rose frame itself, you get Dancing Shadow module and Kunanun in the second section. Dancing Shadow module, performing like your life depends on it. You can fly when you move or boost, but you must end the turn on the ground or another solid surface, or immediately fall. You take your size +1 heat at the end of your current turn if you flew this way. Also, when you brace, you can attempt a final dodge by rolling a d6. On a 4+, the attack automatically misses, otherwise you are hit as normal, expending brace but gaining 0 of its effect, positive or negative. To explain what I just said, basically the system lets you fly, almost like you have burst jump jet, sorta, gaining you a lot of mobility. It also lets you avoid an attack completely while bracing, but this is kinda like gambling. You go all in or nothing, as when your roll fails, you don't get the brace damage resistance effect and stuff. You also don't suffer massive action reduction on your next turn. You are also probably dead. This also means that the system has 0 synergy with other brace enhancing system, like armor lock plating and such, because it will just delete its effect completely if you fail the roll. That is, of course, if you want to roll. If you don't, the brace just goes like normal, but still, this can let you avoid a powerful attack completely, which is very good. It's just dependent on whether you will go all in or not. It also lets you fly too, that can be very useful. Unanun, the all-seeking hound, is a main nexus weapon with an average range that has both seeking and smart, but it has a somewhat low damage. However, its real effect occurs when hitting a target, as on hit, the target count as being hunted until the end of their next turn. During this time, if they become hidden or voluntarily move away from you, they take a painful 4 energy damage and the hunt ends. Essentially, this nexus is designed to prevent your victim from running away. Technically, they can still run, it's just gonna be very painful. In the final section, you get Med Class NHP and Dullahan Lunge. Med Class NHP, some vengefulness is required, is an AI system that grants you one quick action called Konkobars Do, in which with a quick action, you pronounce vengeance on a hostile character in range 10 and line of sight. While affected by your vengeance, the target's final attack rolls can never be affected by accuracy, and each time they don't include you in their attack, they take 4 energy damage. You can only have one vengeance at a time. Too much is bad for your health, and your vengeance ends immediately if you pick a new target, are destroyed, obviously, become hidden, and end your turn without line of sight to your target. This system does 2 things, hopefully keep the target focused on you, and if not, make them suffer for it, though it might be less effective against NPC with area pattern attack. And lastly, Dullahan Lunge, decapitating connection. With a quick action, one hostile character in range 3 and line of sight must pass a hull save or suffer 3 kinetic damage and be unable to make tech actions until the end of their next turn. Do you find which to be insufferable little shit? Then just shut them down and make them eat shit immediately. Most tech attacker won't have high hull anyway, so this can be very effective. You just need to get real close to them. And that's basically it on Rose, a frame barely larger than a hard suit that can suplex those above its weight and cut down both opponents and firepower with its mystical spear. Anyway, that's all for now, and I will see you all next time. Hello there, if you like this video, please subscribe to my channel and click that notification bell button. If you really want to support my channel, you could visit my Patreon page, or buy me some coffee, links in the description. Anyway, have a nice day.